where you have acts of God like a drought, but you have good policies, good preparation, you don't get those situations. But where you have poor policies, poor preparation, and you have the acts of God, then you get this outcome.
This is At Brookings, a weekly in-depth look at issues behind the news. This week, a continent at risk, food insecurity in Africa.
It is a staggering statistic. Due to years of drought, as many as 18 million people in the Horn of Africa and the African Sahel could be facing starvation. But hunger persists elsewhere on the continent, and not solely because of the weather. Senior Fellow Mwangi Kimenyi examines the issue of food insecurity in Africa, its causes and solutions. So weather notwithstanding, Mwangi, policy and politics are also contributing factors to food insecurities. Is that right?
The problem with many of the African countries starts with the policies that are there. You have governments that have not actually invested in agriculture. So we still rely on rain-fed agriculture. So every time there is a small problem with the weather patterns, then you get food shortages. So one is investment. The other one is low productivity. Africa still has a very low productivity in agriculture. And this has to do, again, with investments, again, thinking about irrigations, thinking about better quality seeds, pesticides. There has not been sufficient investments in those areas. There are, of course, other issues. For example, the fact that our land tenure systems may not be conducive to productivity. That impacts productivity. The issue of marginalization of women, that also affects food security. We know that when women have more rights, you find families tend to be more secure in terms of food, food production, the way resources are used in the household.
There's also a disturbing trend growing that I'd like you to talk about, land grabs, where some countries come into Africa, farm there, and export that food back to their own countries. Explain this.
There are several countries, particularly the Middle East African countries, that have been leasing large tracts of land, and including China too, for agriculture. But this, the crops that they are growing, the output is not for domestic consumption. It goes to their own countries. It's going to Middle East, it's going to China, and sometimes they bring their own labor, so it's not really helping the countries. And this trade is actually a very dangerous trade, in my view, that could end up really increasing food insecurity in Africa.
Another issue is the quality of food that's being farmed in Africa.
What's really happening in Africa is a nutrition deficit, and a serious one. And the tendency has been for people to eat the same type of foods, particularly starches. And what has happened is that now you have a lot of serious health problems coming up. So you start seeing the diabetes is exploding in many of the countries. So both macro, what we would call macronutrients and micronutrients, the populations are not receiving in enough quantities. And so they are malnourished, even when they look like they are fed.
Well, realistically speaking, can Africa feed its people?
I believe so. In fact, I think sometimes we think that we have to send food to Africa, and it's good. When there is a crisis, it's good, you could, to send food, but actual food aid, for example, to me, is not the way to go in Africa. What we need to think about is how do we support sustainable agriculture?
What would those solutions be?
We need to improve our infrastructure, rural access roads, invest in research, because that's the other side. You cannot actually achieve food security until you do your own research, understand what are the better crops that you can grow, what better seeds, and don't rely on just getting the seeds that are coming from the United States or from any other country. So we need to do more research. We need to do, for example, drought-resistant crops. Where that has happened, we have seen a lot of progress.
Another issue that needs to be looked at are subsidies on the things that Africa wants to export.
To develop African agriculture, you need to increase production, and you need to not only sell to your own country, but you need to sell more to other countries. Sometimes you produce something that is not necessarily for consumption, it's for export. But Africa finds it very difficult to sell to a lot of countries. like United States, agricultural products to the United States because of the subsidies in the United States. So in one way, United States supports its agriculture with these huge subsidies, the farm subsidies, that distort prices. Okay, they distort the prices, but they also distort the market now for African goods. Now, in a way, and that happens also. So they have all these barriers that if lifted, Africa could actually be able to produce more, even if it's other crops.
And Mwangi, this is a very complicated problem. Children are not being fed today, and this will have an effect on Africa many years down the road.
If you think about the consequences of food insecurity, again, a lot of people may think about, oh, that child is hungry, I'm going to take food because that child may die, and we rush food, and you know the child now survives, you know, maybe malnourished, but you know we save a life. Very good, very important. But the effect of going through this type of food insecurity, whether it's the micronutrients or macronutrients or the real starvation, it's not just one-time thing. It's going to be a lifetime. Children learn less, they have more health problems, they are less productive. So in fact, what you get as a farm institution, what's happening now in the Sahel, it's going to be there for the next 15, 20, 30 years.
Stay up to date with the latest research, learn about Brookings events, and search our directory of experts, all from your mobile device. To download Brookings for your BlackBerry, Android, iPhone, or iPad, go to brookings.edu/mobile.